What's up guys, it's Lord Botha here with another video and fighting games. You know them, you've played them before. They're pretty deeply rooted in our cultural history. You've played fighting games with your buddies while roasting each other and how terrible they are on the couch. You even played them with your girlfriend who'd rather be flipping through books on her Kindle, but has at least learned the button smashing technique of fighters so she can game with you playing Mortal Kombat to try to remind you that she's fun. And over the years, those fighting games have gotten movie adaptations. Specifically in the late 80s, early 90s, fighting video game adaptations were all the rage, with the original Street Fighter, and the Mortal Kombat series. But there is another fighting game that seems to be getting a movie adaptation as well. This comes to us from PC Gamer. A movie adaptation of 1993's Sega fighting game Eternal Champions is on the way, for some reason. So get ready to watch a caveman fight a cyborg kickboxer. I'm going to be honest with you, I know absolutely nothing about Eternal Champions. So I guess I'm going to get a little bit of education on this game as we read along as well. While others started with Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, or Tekken, my childhood fighting game obsession was 1993's Eternal Champions. That series didn't quite have the same longevity as it turned out, but today I am vindicated. They are making an Eternal Champions movie. I'd forgive you if you've never heard of this particular Sega Mega Drive or Genesis classic. To get you up, it was basically a fighting game where characters from all throughout time came together to beat the stuffing out of each other.
Language.
You could play as a caveman against a 1920s mobster or a bounty hunter from the future against a ninja from the 90s. It was very much aping Mortal Kombat outside that twist. It had its own equivalent fatalities, for example, but its weird roster and fun backdrop, each stage a different time period naturally, gave it plenty of personality. As spotted by The Hollywood Reporter, Derek Connolly has been invited to write a script for the film based on the game, to be produced by Skydance Media in a collaboration with Sega. The pedigree here is a little mixed. Connolly co-wrote Kong, Skull Island, which I thought was a very good film, but also the Jurassic World movies. And he also wrote the early versions of the pretty disastrous Rise of Skywalker. And by that they mean the Rise of Palpatine. Saying that's a mixed pedigree for their writer is putting it mildly. Kong Skull Island, I heard, was an okay fun time for normies who could just turn their brain off and watch monsters fight. I've never been a huge Monsterverse guy myself. The Jurassic World movies, I think I saw the first one with Chris Pratt and that was about it. I think what made me check out of those movies was the concept that the human bad guy, Vincent D'Onofrio in that movie, was trying to get raptors to become soldiers that they could drop into enemy territories or something.
What the hell is even that?
I was like, these movies are going to get too ridiculous for me. And Rise of Palpatine, well, we all know how freaking terrible that is. Skydance itself has worked on everything from Top Gun Maverick and Annihilation to The Tomorrow War and Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Yeah, they were also the company that banked heavily on Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, which bombed at the box office. So they had huge, massive hits like Top Gun Maverick, but they've also had big whiffs and seem to also specialize in those big spectacle action movies and monster movies. So essentially Skydance is like a designated hitter of movie making. They're either going to knock it out of the park or they're going to get nothing. And they seem to be one of the few companies financially that can withstand those kinds of hits right now, because it seems like all the other movie companies are playing scared. So my professional opinion is that the movie might be good, or alternatively, it might be bad.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Well, thank you for that, writer of this article. That was a completely pointless piece of information. That could literally be said about anything that's ever made, ever. Congratulations, you've accidentally stumbled onto Schrodinger's box. It's certainly a pretty random property to resurrect at this point. The original game got a sequel in 1995, but apart from that, I don't think that there's been a peep from the series in nearly 30 years. You have to question how much brand recognition is left there and I don't even know that there's much nostalgia out there for it, even if it still has its place in my heart. Honestly, I think that actually does it a great service. The fact that this game doesn't have this much nostalgia and doesn't have a huge player base that can call back to it is probably a good thing. They do have a very small audience, yes, that they can call on, but it also means that it's an IP that's pretty free to normies. Especially when you consider the fact that, like most fighting games, I highly doubt, even though I've never played this, that the story of the game has some complicated way or exposition in which all the fighters get together to have to fight. Pretty much all fighting games have the same general story to it, although there are different variations. The general story goes, there's some kind of tournament that all these fighters are here for. There's a random reason that's drawn up that they're all selected to be at this tournament to fight. And that's about it. Originally, fighting games weren't that heavy on story. Originally, fighting games were meant to, fight against the computer or fight against your friends, and they weren't meant to be a very linear story game. Yes, some of them had campaigns you could fight through, but it's not like they were doling out BioWare or Obsidian level stories here. It's not like they were hiring Kojima to write a Mortal Kombat story.
To begin with, we're not what you'd call human.
You look lost.
Over the past 200 years, a kind of consciousness formed layer by layer in the crucible of the White House. It's not unlike the way life started in the oceans 4 billion years ago. The White House was our primordial soup, a base of evolution. We are formless. We are the very discipline and morality that Americans invoke so often. How can anyone hope to eliminate us? As long as this nation exists, so will we.
So it kind of makes sense, not just from this alone, but from fighting games in general, that Hollywood would pick fighting games to be the first sort of big foray into game adaptations. We've seen other video game adaptations, and they haven't actually done that well. A lot of the linear and role-playing game stories are hard to get correct. The deeper and richer the lore, the harder it is to find the balance between doing right by the game and its writers and its fans, and the lay moviegoers who want to see an entertaining film. Fighting games kind of bridge that gap. There isn't a whole lot of story, especially in the earlier games that they are adapting. Things like Mortal Kombat do get more complicated as you go along. There's a broad base from which to work with. I don't think Mortal Kombat fans in general were very angry about the inclusion of the character Cole in the first Mortal Kombat film. That is to say, the new Mortal Kombat film from 2021. Which, by the way, I looked up those numbers on Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat 2021 did about $84 million worldwide on a $55 million budget. So it didn't quite make its money back, it sounds like. I don't know what the marketing budget was on it either. And you do have to take into account that this was 2021, so it was kind of still in the middle of that pandemic period. I can't remember if it was released on streaming as well. It might have been. It did have an 86% Rotten Tomatoes score from the audience, and there is a sequel that's planned and should be coming out within the next year or two. So it definitely was popular, and it does have a following. I know I'm actually fairly excited for the next Mortal Kombat film. So I think choosing a lesser-known fighting game franchise like this gives the movie company the ability to use more broad creative strokes to make the movie they want, without also pissing off a huge fan base. Still, though, they have to get the writer, director, and people working on this film right. And the writer, it sounds they have, does seem pretty hit or miss. And the company he's working for seems pretty hit or miss. But those are just my thoughts on this new property that's being turned into a movie. This fighting game that I honestly have never heard of. If you have your own thoughts on it, go ahead and leave them in the comments. If you like this video, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, I appreciate you listening this long, and we'll talk to you again later.